Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hope you guys are enjoying your Saturday morning, at least wherever you are in the world. And yeah, today's stream is a bit kind of all over the place, but hopefully I can see if there's any kind of input from the chat, and then we can kind of go through things together. If you're not aware, the topic of the discussion is related to understanding how to approach the Quran, and eventually, culminating in a translation that explains the apparent contradictions and lacks and gaps in understanding the Quranic content. So let me just check up who's here. Yeah, Assalamu alaikum AI. Welcome to the stream. Assalamu alaikum Danny. Yeah, today is not very dense in I guess the kind of lecturing you probably used to hearing from me, but it's more about looking at things kind of broadly and, using the creativity that Allah gave us to piece together what we have in the Quran. Assalamu alaikum Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum New Path No Return. Welcome to the stream yet again. Assalamu alaikum Daniel Marinakis. Assalamu alaikum Soaring Bird. Assalamu alaikum Shanna Townsend. Assalamu alaikum Quranisha Islam. What is God's throne? Well, if you watch part 6 of my Mecca series, you can see that it cannot actually fit the description of what they call it in the Quran today. And you have to look at how does the Quran actually define the words that are used today. So I'll give you an example. Like we have words that are used in Arabic today so often that it's hard for them not to be preserved because it's a living language. People use it for everyday things. Then there are words that barely anybody uses, so it's very easy to sneak in a fake definition in there. And you'll see why there has to be fake definitions, because the nature of Arabic is there are no synonyms. I know that they'll tell you all the time, but first of all, it's based on orders of sound. So there are no two words in Arabic that sound exactly the same. Otherwise, it would be the same word. In English, we have a problem with this. They're called homonyms. So like, the word blue, am I talking about the wind blowing or am I talking about the color? You can't tell if I don't spell it for you. Arabic doesn't have that problem. The other thing is the Quran is clearly referencing a reality that is not apparent to us anymore. What I mean by that is the nature of the world we live in is based around its illusions. Allah calls the dunya a delusion. He says the akhirah is better for you. My idea and conception of what the Quran is talking about is it goes straight to the conclusion that would take you lifetimes to even think that that exists. But Allah gives you the revelation and He tells you this is the natural conclusion of what it's all about. So everything else is irrelevant, because if you're honest and sincere, you will be guided to that truth that God brings you, right? So eventually what we have to deal with is a lot of bending our mind to things we're just not comfortable with. We're not comfortable with a lot of these concepts. But the grammar shows you that this is how it is. So when you see things like in Livestream 5, right? That there are donkeys whose sound is worse than all of the sounds, like just the worst of the sounds, right? That does not translate well into what we call a donkey today. And it should be no surprise at this stage in the game that if you're already aware that there are so many issues with the standard narrative of things, the standard narrative of science, the standard narrative of history, of the news, and even religion, it shouldn't be hard to open your mind a little bit to the possibility of maybe there's things in this book from Allah's perspective that we have not even considered, but it's in there. As long as you kind of let the verses speak for themselves. That's one idea. So the definitions, that original meanings can be lost. That's why the Quran is the remembrance. It's the only form of written literature, if you can call it that gives you the keys to understanding that. Because of in what way all of these words are used in this original language. Yeah, so I would suggest you you look at Mecca Part 6. There's even words you're going to find in English and other languages that resemble its Arabic origin. Like in the case of arsh, it's clear that is related to arch, right? There's no coincidence because Allah is talking about the arsh ya'rishun as a verb, that things are erected, right? Built high up, just like in arches. Even the word for building is called architecture. Arch is in there. So what you have to deal with to the particular, the kind of mainstream Sunni Shia school of thought is if Arsh is this throne of God, then why not put it throughout every usage of the word? No, they don't. They put trellis in there, a thing that is used for gardening and planting. They'll put all kinds of things. They'll put roof in there as well when there's already a word that fits for roof. Which brings me to the next point. The Quran is not there to confuse you. It's not ambiguous. So, for example, if Allah uses this one word, and He could have used any other word for this particular ayah, this meaning, this idea, He would have. There's no need for Allah to be poetic. There's no need for Allah to just put riddles in there. He tells you exactly like it is. The epitome of what the truth is. That's what Allah does. And it's a product of Him having full knowledge, intimate full knowledge. So for example, when you take a word like bahar, okay? So this is a word that, all revolves around body of water. Okay, so you could say it means a great river or a lake or a sea or even like some kind of expansive mind of whatever, something more abstract than that, even something vast. I already showed in one of my live streams that root is related to vastness if you reverse it. So if you put the letters in the opposite order, this is another thing that only Arabic can do. Rahaba is related to vastness, extensive space. Like if you go to the ocean, you see like it just goes on and on and on as far as the horizon. Clearly, if you want to decipher the meanings of the Quran, which I suggest is super important. Why? Because Allah talks about rejecting the ayahs as instrumental in eternal damnation. For example, like there are many sects in Islam today, they reject the Quran all the time. Hell is not eternal. They follow other books above this one. Like there's so many ways. They believe entire ayahs are omitted from the Quran, which goes against its authenticity, goes against its preservation. That's what rejecting the Quran is about. It's not somebody that's ignorant of the Quran. They don't have a chance to reject it. But it's clearly something that's active, not passive, right? So if you have the wrong understanding, and it's not people that are putting effort in there, it's people that are just sitting back and blindly absorbing somebody's words or some scholar or sheikh or whatever, and not looking at things for themselves where there's a gap in understanding. So clearly, if you want to understand the Quran, you kind of have to make sure that there's no contradiction in what's being elucidated in the book. So it kind of has to work holistically, the whole revelation, right? Bahr can't really be a large river because there's a word for river called neher. And your starting point is what you're given, right? In this day and age, we have a massive advantage that we can actually compare in real time all kinds of translations for free. We can compare all kinds of vocabularies, definitions of words. And just through process of elimination, pinpoint which one makes the most sense. It's not a matter of this is the ultimate truth that I have come up with. No, it's not a matter of that at all. But we want to get the most benefit from this book while we're in this life. So clearly it's a physical thing because Allah is talking about the sea. You're extracting things from the sea, right? It's not an abstract concept, clearly. Nobody is taking pearls from your mind, or you're not. Which brings me to the second point. Metaphors. I mean, I don't know how many times it's going to happen, but because it's the topic of the stream, I guess it's worthwhile discussing. Metaphors in the Quran are very explicit. Allah would not let that be subjective in any way. And what I'm talking about is these words like mithli, ka'anna, right? When you put ka in front of a noun, in front of a preposition or whatever it is, it actually takes the real life thing and it turns it into a symbol. So this thing is like this. The seven heavens, their representation, okay, not literal, but their representation are from the earth. That's metaphorizing. That's allegory. Beyond that, we don't have a right to say anything is a symbol or not, unless specifically outlined by Allah, the author of this book. Yeah, salam, Makalan Kali. Salam, Miss Ali. So let's get that straight, it's just very obvious to anybody reading a translation or the Arabic when Allah starts and ends a metaphor. That being said, a metaphor is based around giving real examples to explain something harder to understand. Like you're not going to invent something to symbolize a concept. You're going to use something from reality because that's what everyone understands, right? Like, this place is as hot as a sauna. Everybody knows what the metaphor is. Everybody knows, are directed to an experience of what to expect from this meaning. So this is how Allah works as well. Like a healthy word is like a healthy tree. There's no fakery there. It's not like Allah creates, a realm where things are all imagined. He has the full knowledge. If that tree is just abstract, he would say that. But why would he need to even say that? That's something us humans who are obsessed with poetry would do, because that would be embellishing. That would be exaggerating. He doesn't, in fact, Allah doesn't do that. So he tells you very openly, this word is like this tree. It's a metaphor, yes, but you use a real thing for it. And so when Allah says its branches are in the heaven, not in the sky, in the heaven, that should really kind of tell you how large that tree is. It's not made up. Another thing, this is probably the most important concept to grasp. If we're ever to come up with a translation that can work for anyone's interpretation of the Quran. And what I mean by that is, let's just say you've heard all the explanations. You've heard the Sunni narrative, and there's like several narratives, right? All throughout the different schools of thought in Sunni Islam. You've heard the Christian apologists, what they think of the Quran. You've heard, and they just basically kind of leverage off the Sunni narrative. You've heard the Shias explain their tafsirs. You've heard that a lot of the Quran alone people, they have interpretations derived from how they understand the Quran. How do we reconcile this diversity of opinions? Simple. Don't rely on an opinion. Go directly to the text. What does Allah say outright? And a lot of people do this, but then they start to kind of play around with the definitions of words. It's an exercise in absurdity. Here's what I mean. When somebody tells you, do you believe in God? Okay. They just go the Jordan Peterson route and say, what do you mean, God? What is God? What is belief? It's a philosophical, nonsensical approach to the world. And when it comes to the Quran, there is no veering here or there. There's just a gap in understanding because nobody actually looks at all of the usages of one word, let alone all of the usages of all the words. I'll give you an example. There's a word in the Quran called qareen, right? And because of the corruption of sects like Sunni Islam, where they say that the Prophet Muhammad somehow converted his companion devil into Islam and he just overrided the test, a lot of Quran alone people, they will actually make the mistake to think that there is no such thing as a companion devil in this life. And that really, they'll take two ayahs and they'll say, oh, the devils only descend on those who forget the remembrance of Allah, upon the liars and the sinners, right? But why not look at all of the instances? I did a stream on the jinn. I think it's live stream 4. And I went through every instance of the word qareen, what it actually means. it's undeniable. There is a aspect of the unseen within every human being. And that's why both believers and disbelievers, just I'm using these terms for sake of simplicity, okay? They will see that creature, that thing, that tries to lead them to hell and makes them commit kufr. So you see, we start off with one word. We look at all of its usages. We look at the ayahs, the context of the ayahs it's used in, to determine what Allah is talking about. What's the deal with that word? Once we put all of the attributes of that word together, this is actually in the Quran, already talked about. It's called Rattil at-Tartilan. So think about it. There's no room for mysticism. There's no room for like abstracting and metaphorizing. You're literally taking what Allah says, even in this kind of corrupted translation, and deriving so much knowledge from the very thing Allah told you to do. Rattil tartilan. That's not reciting the Quran slowly. Because Allah could have said that even more plainly. That means it doesn't make sense. If you can make a better analysis that can frame things better in more clear speech than what Allah put there, you have the wrong story. Simple. The Quran is clear, and that's not an understatement. It's as clear as it gets. Everything. What we are missing is the context. What does it all revolve around? And so that's why people shut off their brains when they hit a wall. They don't look further into things. They don't go more into the research deep dive that you need to unlearn what the world teaches you. That's part of the nature of this book. I came to the Quran before I understood a lot of things. And eventually, it kind of dawned on me. I compared different interpretations, what people get. One such good example is the shape of the earth, okay? That's not the only issue, because the earth is in tandem with all the heavens, the sun, the moon, with all of the other aspects of its environment. So eventually I realized that what is the Quran actually discussing plainly? Does it talk about what they teach us in science? No. That's all assumed, because the scholars have taken that story and they need the Quran to be true and marketable for the masses. So they basically, try to fit a square peg in a round hole by using the Quran as this miraculous book of modern scientific miracles. No, it doesn't work like that. Science is the opposite of a miracle. That's why ayahs exist. Every single little section of words in the Quran is an ayah. Sometimes it's even one word. Imagine in one word, Allah can give you such profound information. The reason that exists is because those are all signs of a creator, the creator that made you and everything else. And so to the scientific world, their methodology stops. They can't actually explain any of this other than through a creator. So this is the origin of disbelief. Like with Musa, he comes with the signs, ayahs, and they deny him. They actually can't explain it through any means. So number one thing, I'm gonna kind of probably veer off a bit from Baba Shuaib, even though I respect his work. I love his live streams and everything. And I'm grateful that he's put in so much work and effort into creating the environment that we need to research the Quran, read the Quran, understand it. But I will say that to me, it goes against the Quran if one word has several meanings or even more than one meaning across its usage in one book. If you accept that, fine. But why? Why would you accept that? Number one reason is because that meaning you've given that word, it doesn't work in all cases. So you're kind of pigeonholed to redefine a word somewhere else, right? Like a good example Quranic Islam brought is arsh. Most of the cases, arsh is throne. But in some cases, it doesn't work because it's plural and it doesn't, it doesn't work in other cases. So they'll use like roofs. They'll use trellises. Totally different. Totally different. That's why it has to be reconciled. If there's more than one meaning of one word in the Quran, I'm talking about definitions, like salat. Okay, clearly, it doesn't work in all cases, whether it's synagogues or blessings or prayers. You got to pick one. It could be neither of them. It could be none of them. But it's an excuse, in my opinion, to suggest that Allah gave us a code in the form of 3-letter roots in the Arabic language. And that code, which encompasses an idea in every root, cannot accommodate one meaning for every single word. This is the idea. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't work in all cases, you go back to the drawing board and figure out why it doesn't work. Brothers and sisters, this is why the Quran can have no contradictions. Salam alaikum, brother Cornetix. I just wanted to highlight your comment here. The Quranic terms that encompass its wide use pentextually. Too many brothers believe each word have multiple meanings. The Quran has in it no contradictions. We should expect very consistent and unique meanings. We can't have 3 words for camel. Yeah. Like, for example, I'll come back to this idea, but let me just show you guys. So if I type in the word palm tree, right? There's actually 2 words, apparently, for palm tree. You see? There's lina and there's nakhla. Why are they so lazy? Is it laziness or is it deliberate? I can't make up my mind. Sometimes I want to say it's laziness. Other times I feel like it's deliberate because if you were to put something superior in there, at the very least, it changes the context of everything. I'll get to what that might be if you want, but I think it's kind of, the point is clear. You mentioned camels, Cornetix. Camels is even worse. Because with camel, you have jamal, naqa. What else? Ba'ir. Dhamir. I just put 4 words in there for the same idea. Okay, one is a female camel. Fine, no problem. But think about it. Like, doesn't it seem Somewheres in the world, they're trying to force an idea. Think about the Quran in the desert. It's in the Islamic kind of Arabia, and sand and dunes and camels and palm trees and dates. Dates, nowhere in the Quran. I've mentioned this before, guys. Clusters of dates, fresh dates. And if you want confirmation for anything, it's a useful website. It is, because what you're doing is exactly what all of you have done to understand why hadith cannot be part of the religion. You compare hadith against itself. You're not even going into the conspiracy route. You're not even talking about, you don't have to open the Quran to prove that there's a problem. If you go to this idea, rutab or rutaban, okay, fresh dates. Miriam apparently ate fresh dates. This is what this root has to do with. Moisture. But how do you know that means moisture? Again, you just follow the line of inquiry. You have to be a detective in this regard, because it's your like salvation at stake, like whatever you can contribute, it's worth it. Hell is not worth anything, that any enjoyment you get in this life, right? Your efforts are not going to be wasted in this life. So when you go to this idea, ratbin, is used in one ayah. Allah talks about the mafatihu of the unseen. See, this is an idea too. Al-bar. Is that dutiful or land? Allah is called Al-bar. So obviously things are not ordered the way we want them to, but at least the process is started. And you go down and you see wala ratbin wala yabisin. It's contrasted with dryness. And I get it. This doesn't fit. Like, we can do a way better job than whatever software was used to collate this, whatever. I actually think the whole Sahih international translation, many of the kind of standard translations, they never imagined back when they were doing this in the 90s and earlier that this would all be shown publicly for free in this format where you can compare and see, hey, that doesn't make sense. 3 different words, all the same kind of lazy interpretation. Thank you, Miss Ali, for bringing that to my attention. People translate more than one word in the Quran as boat or ship. That introduces me to another point. These are all just kind of things to keep in mind when you're just perusing the Quran and trying to figure out what is the substance of it, right? It's a wide topic, right? Because there's so many things to cover. But let me just show you what you brought up there, okay? So I can go to the root, right? I can put ships in there, right? And yeah, you can instantly see there's discrepancy. Al-Jawar are ships. Okay, well, Al-Fulk is ships. There's even something called, if I put in singular, Safina. 3 words for one idea. Allah is not going to be redundant when He knows everything, especially when He made this clear, consistent. And this other thing I just want to bring up carefully, because this is such a fluid conversation. When we talk about the Quran being fully detailed, okay, fussilat. Let's just drop the fully part. Let's say the Quran is detailed. Did Allah neglect anything from the Quran? No. He says we've not neglected anything from the Quran. Okay. So if he hasn't neglected anything, even though everything that we know, maybe 99% of what we know in this life is not in there, let's say. Does it make sense that the Quran is not fully detailed? Here's the thing. Let's just say I don't know. It's kind of tricky to put yourself in Allah's perspective, but let's say like you have a higher perspective than what you are as a human, right? Maybe you're an angel or something, right? And you can see so much more of the truth than what we would see. We're tested, right? Angels in themselves are part of the unseen now. Does it make sense if you wanted to educate your creation, humans, if you wanted to educate, and teach, because Allah teaches humans in the Quran, by giving them a giant set of encyclopedias and said, read this and come back to me how to pray, come back to me how to, be a good person, how to worship Allah and everything. No, it doesn't make sense. That's what a human would do. When we go into our fields of study in university or college, we become more and more specified into specialties, and in reality, like, we don't actually encompass anything in the knowledge. We get more and more specific, not general. That's what we consider an expert in the human world. Allah, He knows the ins and outs of every possible thing. So all He has to do is put all of the seeds for all of the knowledge in one book. Think about it. It's genius. You don't have to worry about explaining anything, because let's just say most of the world, what it teaches is fake anyway. So you can just put that in the category of following assumption. Done. You don't have to worry about politics. You don't have to worry about nation states. You don't have to worry about, all these other systems humans have come up with. Just they follow assumption. Done. And then you might ask, well, what about these stories of the messengers then? That seems kind of obscure and kind of, compared to the daily world, like neither here nor there. It's not, though. That's why there's so many ayahs dedicated to Isa. There's so many ayahs dedicated to Musa. You could say they're archetypes and all this, but they're historical people. They existed in a form. If you don't believe they're named people or whatever, okay, fine. I mean, I guess Miriam's mother just gave birth to an archetype. There are stories in the Quran. There's an entire chapter called Stories, Al-Qasas, chapter 28. This is why when you metaphorize things and you make things less tangible, the Quran becomes this nothing. It just becomes another book that a poet could write, when that's not what it claims. And here's the thing, Miss Ali, what I wanted to come to. We use different words for the same idea. Like you mentioned there, right? That's not how Allah works. In essence, right? He knows us better than we know ourselves. So how is He going to present the information about eternity? Exactly how we would need to digest it. He's not going to go into all of the things that we could derive from it. For example, what you've seen on this channel is mainly extracted, derived information from the Quran, and comparing what you get from the Quran to the world around you. Imagine, this one book is still relevant in 2024, more so than anything else. And they're constantly distracting you, telling you, oh, you know, with Trump and with what. No. That's all theater. All of it. And trust me, there's endless videos I could make about endless things in the Quran. That's the nature. It just seems endless, like the sea. But obviously, you can only do so much. Yes, Miss Ali, they do believe it's a wooden boat that they sail on the sea. And the reason why is because they actually believe that the Bible is basically true and the Quran just changed some of the details. That's what you get with the Muslims today. Here's another thing to consider. If you want to decipher like what the Quran is talking about, every human being can do this. If they, if their intention is in the right place, okay? So we go to this word that's mentioned so often, al-fulk, right? Right off the bat, everything is ship or ships. So, we're in Noah's flood, right? It says, he built a ship. But then those things are all over the Quran. It's the same word, al-fulk. Sure, there's al-fulk al-mashhun. That's particularly for Noah, right? But is it ship or ships? Is it collective plural? Okay, fine. What's the other information we get from this root that talks about this concept? Falaka, falakin. Oh, right. Orbiting. So now we get something celestial from the same root. And this is the way Arabic works. This is why it can't be in any other language. Imagine, all you have to do is follow the line of inquiry, look at every single, I can't do all this, I expect that at some point people can confirm things, like you have people called sadiqeen in the Quran. I think every person has this capacity, What I'm getting at is this root is related to something astronomical, celestial. It has to be. The word for astronomy is called falakiyya. Let me bring this up, okay? So this is a great website to compare all of the data regarding one idea. You just put in a root. Okay, so I put in this root. Okay, you can see on the screen, falaka. That's the root in question. Okay, it collates all the dialects of Arabic with classical Arabic, and you just look at all of them. Okay, make no assumptions. Just look at all of them. Ship, ill-starred, unlucky, as if like when people look at the heavens to determine their fate. A giant snake. At first glance, this is not going to appear at all related. At all. But trust me, this is the beauty of this study. Reflect. Why? Every single thing in the end, in your personal life, in the world, wherever, is going to be a sign of Allah's presence. You've probably noticed at some point, right? There's synchronicities. There's things that are not coincidences. You just look back on your life. You didn't arrive there from years before by your own accord. There is a guidance, right? I would not be here if there was not some kind of hand in play, right? Reflect, take a pen and paper, write it down. Write down all the verses for yourself, right? Giant snake, celestial sphere, celestial body, star, circuit or orbit of celestial bodies. Astronomic, I told you right here. Falakiya, astronomy. Astrology, astronomer, astrologer. Okay, to predict the future. And obviously they put in these things now because Arabic is unfortunately used by people of grave ignorance today. Grave ignorance. You just go in the Middle East and all you see are these concerts. Like literally, it's like Hollywood on steroids at the moment. I know it's crazy, but that's what it's going to. And they all sing in Arabic and they do all this, and it hurts you even more because you understand the power of this language, and that's what it's used for today. You can look more, deeper into it. Circuit. Boatmanship, ferryman, rowboat. Metal discs on the bottom of a sled, astronomical star, planet. A filuka. This is an example of a word we use in non-Arabic languages that came from Arabic. A small boat with a sail. What it comes down to is navigating space, what we call space, the heavens, is nautical. That's why I put a post in there. All space travel is nautical in nature. People are confused. Oh, what are you talking about? No, it's not. According to Arabic, it is. According to the Quran, it is. According to the stories, when Musa split the sea. So think about this, right? There's clearly tangible information in the Quran. All you need to do is go to the etymology, go to the origin, the root of it. This actually is useful for everything. Like, if you don't understand something in English and you want to look at where did this come from? Where did we get this word from? It's all there. The work has been done for you. So, yeah, Cornutics. I can't help but wonder how more Quran alone brothers and sisters don't investigate or challenge one word having multiple meanings or multiple words having one meaning. Okay. Like I said, we're human. Some things are hard to confront. And when you hit a wall in anything, the Quran and your life or whatever, it's just an instinct of ours to just not go further. And I think the problem is that we're so accustomed in our comfortable kind of circles, our bubbles rather, that it's difficult to even poke holes in that bubble, let alone venture off further. I hope that this channel can at least provide the neural pathways for people to maybe reconsider some things. I'm not saying you have to abide by anything. I'm just saying maybe the current location of Mecca doesn't make sense. Is that hard to prove? I mean, you can find so much evidence for any bias you have. The Christians, they neglect all of the evidence against their religion. Same with the Sunnis and Shias and Jews. They put on blinders like, no, I don't see anything wrong with what I believe in. The Quran, there is this concept in the Quran that Belief is related to trust, confidence, reliability. Amana, amin, aminin. You understand? We're going through this book, okay? We're going through this book increasing in iman. It's quite literally confidence, like you're confident. You don't have to wonder. Like, it speaks to a part of you that you just know that this is the truth. Like, non-practicing Muslims that speak Arabic, non-practicing, they just kind of go on with the enjoyments of life and everything. They all identify as Muslim, no problem. They all know the Quran is from God. That's why they even call themselves Muslims. Imagine, the Quran is like the last thing holding them together to even use the word Muslim. Hadith, totally, no. People have lost confidence in that. It's based on a shaky foundation. It does. You go deeper into it, you see it's a conspiracy. But at the very least, this is what we can rely on because it's Allah's speech. Okay, so this is the idea. Like, there's multiple words having one meaning. That can't exist, or one word having multiple meanings, the opposite. It can't exist. It's like having a software and you have a code that's redundant, ambiguous. In chemistry, I think the word used is degenerate. It has the same amount of orbitals or something. It's been a long time since I looked at chemistry. Allah's speech is beyond human standards. That's why, in the end, it will be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt eventually what everything was all about, what was always under the surface. Now we have time. We have the freedom to at least explore for ourselves before it's too late. Yeah, that's a great point, Karnitix. Trust in God. In God we trust. Fidelis. Fidelis is used for faith, but when something has high fidelity, that means it's reliable. Like a high fidelity signal on your antenna is a reliable signal. Hi-fi. So, you know, we have to move away from this idea of reading the Quran in our comfort zone. This jihad of haqq, truth, it's unlike any other. That's why the Quran is clear. Exactly. Thank you, Shah. The Quran is clear and simple to understand. It has an original meaning. Humans are just forgotten. Humans are related to the word for forgetting, right? Nasi, insan. Even nisa, women, is related to the word for insan, like across roots, employing the same letters. So it's clear. Like, we just have to put the work in. It's not going to be talked down to us. It's not going to be dictated to us. Yeah, absolutely, Kenneth. It's very hard to understand how Allah's speech is different than ours. It has different rules. Hey, 1 second. Right. Salam, Brother Daffy. Welcome to the stream. Yeah. Okay, so if you watch from the beginning, I mentioned some kind of things to consider when you approach the Quran as a complete revelation. And this is another point I want to kind of bring forward. So the Quran is full of patterns, right? Let's let's not assume that Allah is just throwing in ayahs just to fill the gaps, and He's just made this book because it's just a beautiful recitation. No, you can have all the beauty of the recitation with something very structured and purposeful. So why does Allah say al-fulk? I mean, you can put any word in there, right? The one that comes to mind is tree, right? The word for tree is shajar. Many times there is this tree used that is definite. Okay? Why would Allah isolate? I mean, he is the creator of everything, and He isolates this particular creation as a specific one because it has the definite article, the tree, right? Ash-shajarata. Same with the plural as well, ash-shajar. The stars, al-anjum, an-najm al-thaqib. That's actually a good one to show, to highlight a principle. Okay, well, let me show you. So if I put in the word for star, oh, look at that. There's two words for star. How do you distinguish between them? There's something like clearly going on that just most people take for granted, right? So, Surah At-Tariq, it has this phrase in there. And this is part of Arabic grammar, right? An-Najm Al-Thaqib. You see right there, it's a noun. The piercing, the star. When you have two nouns together like that, particularly with these thes preceding them, there's not this arbitrary poetry where, oh, this is the star and this is the tree. No, it specifies things down to one object or individual. Like, for example, Al-Masih, that's a title. Al-Rasul, another title. Al-Ansar, Al-Muhajirun. What I'm trying to get at is that the gives it way more weight than what you can imagine. Because this is something that Allah is setting aside from the rest of the creation. The star of the piercing. And think about it this way. Al-Masjid Al-Haram, same idea. If Al-Masjid Al-Haram was where they tell you, which it can't be, it just, it literally cannot be, because it doesn't even meet basic criteria from the Quran to qualify as Allah's Al-Masjid Al-Haram. So think of it this way. There's an invisible of. There's no word for of in Arabic. So this is something that English came up with to accommodate its lack of encompassing, lack of grammar consistency. Arabic, all the grammar is consistent. No synonyms, no homonyms. All the words are based off of these codes called roots that convey single concept. All the roots are related by sounds. These letters are not useless. They're all defined. There's no ambiguity in it. So what you see is the star of the piercing. One concept in the Quran, you can write a book about it. That's why this book is so compressed in information. If you don't want to believe it's fully detailed, fine. Imagine if you took all of the truths, like 100% authentic, sahih truths of the world. Let's say you go to the Vatican or whatever, and you find their underground library. You go to the Library of Alexandria, whatever. Take all the millions and millions of books, and you just condense it down. Sifting out what's exaggeration, sifting out what's embellishment, what's, not authoritative. Eventually, what you come down to is information reflecting the Quran. I know it's hard to grasp, but if you watch this channel, you'll notice that the history we're given is at odds with the Quran. Just like the cosmology, just like the kind of like religious duties and everything. They're at odds with the Quran. Why? Whoever came up with those things knows very well the best way to deceive humanity via Shaitan's plan is to make them subconsciously think that Allah is something different, something else than what he deserves, what is due to him. A great example is you put Al-Masjid al-Haram in Saudi. The label, not the actual place, the label. You call this desert place Arabia. You call all of these hadith laws Islam, Sharia. Now you've isolated most of the world because nobody will ever think there's any truth in that just from the surface level. Some people are a bit more sincere and they do their investigation and due diligence. And guess where it starts? Always starts with the Quran. The Quran is the thing that propels people into anything remotely related to Islam. You understand? So that has to be the basis of everything. Like I mentioned, everything is compressed into this book. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous. I sound like a lunatic probably. But just do, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Salam, Brother Govan. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, exactly, Cornitix. This is the premise, right? The book is heavy. Every surah, every ayah, every word, every diacritical mark. That's another thing too. Sometimes when we're just stuck, we jump through these hoops of excuses to say, they had no diacritical marks. The Arabs, when they were reciting the Quran, it was all oral anyways, so they just added these markings in. Fine. That introduces doubt into the preservation, authenticity, reliability. Everything else follows suit from that assumption. You can't prove that. You're just going off of the mainstream history because they conclude that. The Orientalists concluded that. And the Sunnis obliged. And because the Sunnis obliged, now everyone's frame of reference for the Quran didn't have diacritical marks in the beginning. Does anyone ask the question, what if it did? Maybe some people have, but you have to go further, as far as you can. Like, what does this book actually mean to people that believe in it? You know, it it's clearly it clearly requires an explanation. And to me, the idea that there are just these scribes over time and they were just writing things down and changing things up and putting dots here instead of underneath, that's not sufficient. That's not befitting of scripture. You're talking about a heavenly document. No, doesn't work like that. So I've mentioned in an hour kind of main ideas, right? One thing I should mention as well, read every single word, look at every single word verbatim. And yeah, it'll look kind of like gibberish, you know, in English, whatever. That's fine. It's two different languages. But look at every single word. Let me give you an example why this is so important. So if I go to this word direction, this is what you find. Again, discrepancy, right? Qibla, shatra, wijha, qasdu, janib. So when you go, where is it? I think it's this one. One word in Arabic, one word in English. I know this is kind of difficult because Arabic is so lofty in the Quran that we could use many English words to describe one concept. However, let's just say, you know, humans are creative. They can come up with words. English is such a wide vocabulary, probably the widest of languages, that, you know, if you think about it, it has to be simple yet powerful enough so it can be used consistently. And Miss Ali, I can kind of show you, if Quran is not a book, so many things follow from that, right? Kitab, kataba. When you let's look at this one here. One sec. I know I always get sidetracked. It's my fault. Kataba. Many entries under this word. Let me see if I can find it. There it is. Okay. To write down, to pen, to inscribe, to record. To compose, to draft, to bequeath, make a will, give written orders, prescribe, preordain. Fate, destiny. Typewriter is called the katib, or writing itself. Author, katib. A scribe is katib. Clerk, registrar, notary. Something that's written has something to do with our fate in the Arabic language. That's how it's used in the Quran as well. We wrote this for them. It's written. Yeah. Kutubi, bookseller. Note, letters. You know, it's some kind of recording. And a recording in English even means audio and transcription as well. Anyway, how do you get towards the direction from that one word, shatra? And this is a very powerful one for me, because if I look that up, shatra doesn't have any. Let me see if I can pull that up. Okay. So this is important. Every word. Okay, I got you. No problem, Miss Ali. Every word in the Quran is based off of verbs, actions. Fa'al, like that construction. So first thing they show, obviously, are verbs, because all of the verbs can be made from this kind of infinitive idea. Shatara. Let's just go down the list here. To be sly, shrewd, okay. Smart, bright, skillful. To have or divide into equal parts, cut through, split. Where did they get the idea of direction? Half. Portion, share. Bisector is mathematics. There's direction. You see, this is the same word, right? And this is where the discrepancy becomes glaringly apparent. This shatr, that's not the only idea. I mean, shatra. Toward is the word ila, right? It would be very clear in that sense. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Carnetix. If the Quran was only oral, we'd miss details like the two different spellings of Ibrahim, how we can attach the two spellings to different time periods of Ibrahim's life, to just name one example. That's something I came to grasp, like accidentally. That's how usually it works. Like, you don't expect to find something, and then you kind of observe the pattern long enough. A pattern is a sign of intelligence. All around us, we're surrounded by patterns in nature. Anybody who's honest knows that nothing like this can come randomly. Yeah. I'll kind of get to the comments there, but I'm glad you brought that up, because even that, there is no explanation why Ibrahim has two different spellings of his name. All they'll say is, well, scribes put it there. So when you don't know, then you fall back on excuses. There's many meanings. There's alternate spellings. It doesn't mean anything. It's just human interaction with the Quran, and that's it. No. So when you look back, everything that you're taught about Islam from the normative mainstream model is meant to do what? Destroy your faith, destroy your confidence in this one idea, Allah, and everything that follows from that idea, that reality. Allah exists, hence He created everything, hence you are His creation. There is no there's no distinction between you and the creation. You're not a god. You're not. Nothing can possibly take that place. Allah's always existed. And then you get, obviously, the intelligence, the all-knowing attributes of Allah, the fact that He knows every single thing you will ever do. He's written things into the future from the past. He is outside of time and space. Everything that follows has to be factored into the translation of the Quran. For example, Allah is free of need. That's what they put, Hamid, right? But then he needs you to worship him. Even though it doesn't say that. It doesn't say like he needs that. It doesn't say he needs you to fear him. It doesn't say he needs your prayers. It doesn't say he needs anything from you. We have to stop anthropomorphizing God, as well as stop abstracting God as this thing that is like what pantheists do. It's just like, oh, it's in nature, it's the universe, it's the kind of source. Abstracting God versus turning him into a man. Basically, like the temperament of a man. One thing I want to show you as well. So that's, you saw Crown Corpus, living languages. One thing that's also interesting, sometimes you have to use different methods because different problems are created, right? And I kid you not, like if you look into this honestly, it's all by Allah's permission anyway, right? You will find the answers you're looking for that reflect the intention. If your intention is wrong, you're going to find all the wrong things because you're not looking for something to challenge your beliefs, to challenge your ideology, your biases and baggage you bring to this book. So think about it. Let me just show you this idea. Maybe I can. Okay, this is interesting one I can do. Maybe salat. So one of the things I realized kind of doing this for over time, like maybe about a year, it's crazy, it's only been a year. Channel's only been around since March, is that the languages they made to make like a plethora of communication systems based off of the one that works at all times, Arabic. They hide a lot of the meanings in these languages based off of Arabic, like Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Spanish, English, Urdu. A lot of languages transfer the meaning to them that they derive from Arabic. So for example, let me show you guys. So like sirat, right? Sirat. Let me see if I can find. I'll do salat first, and okay. So clearly there are. I showed this in the live stream 7 around salat. Remember, it's based off of verbs. So whatever this word means, and they say, how do you pray salat? They should be asking, what is the action of salat? And they say, well, it's salli, yusalli. You see this? They quote the Quran on this. They quote the Quran in that highlighted bit because people know something is wrong with the accepted explanation. It has to be. That's why, the other side to confidence in the information and the revelation, believe in Allah, the last day, his books, his angels, his messengers. The other side of that is amilu salihat. And it just gets this kind of, vague kind of description of work righteousness. Fine. There's no problem with that. But notice something that I really respect Baba Shuaib's efforts, what he brought forward, is this concept of handiyadis. I'll type it in the chat for you. Handiyadis. This is exactly how the Quran works. You know why? Even down to the prepositions, it's absolute. This word is absolute. It's objective. Because the one that revealed it has the objective truth about everything. His word trumps, if I can use that anymore. His word is over everything, encompassing. That's why he has full knowledge. Handiyadis is just a little word that explains this. Wa. Think about it. Wa. That means and. When you use and as a preposition, it links two things together. That's how we use it. It's just sometimes poetic, sometimes it's practical, whatever. When Allah uses the word and, they are things that just have to go together in that verse. They just have to. Like internally, they go together. There's a connection made. That's why wa kind of looks like something connecting another, like a link. That just, it's absolute. It fits. Think about it. الذين عملوا الذين آمنوا وعملوا صالحات. They go together. You can't have one or the other. They go together. Another example, the word إلا. That means except. E-X-C-E-P-T. Except. See, I have to spell it because English has homonyms. They all prostrated entirely. Next ayah. Except Iblis. What you're going to find is if you look at that word except, illa, it's the epitome of what that means throughout the Quran. Most of humanity don't know, they don't reason, they don't understand, they don't accept, it uses this general term. Shaitan even uses this word like this. I will mislead them all entirely, except the mukhlasin, your chosen loyal servants. So those people that come after that word, or whatever comes after the word except, is automatically the farthest thing categorically from what came before. Most of humanity are mushriks, except those conscious of God, muttaqin. It's at odds. Yeah, exactly, Chris. Welcome to the stream, by the way. Obey Allah, obey the messenger. If any Sunni comes to you with this tired argument, it's really tired. They just don't understand how detailed and how definitive the Quran actually is. It's not poetry. It's the only way Allah can provably show you the clear ayat. Allah could have said, obey Allah only. Every time it says obey Allah and then obey the messenger, he could have said it like that. He could have said obey the messenger because ipso facto, the messenger brings what Allah sends down. But no, he did it this way to highlight a principle, to show you the power of how much thought is in the Quran. This is why it's not the work of a human or a jinn. Definitely not the work of an angel. It's the work of Allah, Allah's handiwork. Now, what's the connotation from Sunnis? Obey Allah means Quran. Obey the Messenger means Hadith. That's what they really mean. Let's not get things twisted, right? Obey Allah and obey the Messenger. They say that's two separate things that you need together. Fine. Everywhere else where it uses Allah and His Messenger, Allah and His Messenger, Allah and His Messenger, well, guess what? It's one thing. A war from Allah and His Messenger. So that's a war from the Quran, a war from Hadith? No, it's not. This is how, frankly, ignorant and arrogant people have become that gatekeep the Quran. You're not allowed to follow this book except the way we tell you to. So, yeah, the word accept, I mean, it's objective, absolute and objective. But I just want to show you, like, they already agree Salat is a place of worship in one ayah. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying, why not reconcile things? You know, the word for treaty or like armistice and stuff, it's solah. It's usually used for peace. Like when you have a peace after a war, you come to an agreement, things are resolved. That word is so important to our salvation because Allah says, Amilu salihat. As-salihat. It's even specific things in Allah's knowledge that qualify as as-salihat, plural. Rectifying these things are in the world around you. Reconciling things together. Reconciliation is salah. So it makes sense that we're not born in this life to just have things happen to us and just move on, distracted and entertained. We are supposed to actually actively make an effort to the best of our capacity. And we're human, we have shortcomings, no problem, but that's what's required of humanity. Humanity is forgetful. Okay, what's the antidote? Remember. Shaitan makes you forget. Allah makes you remember. And so it's exactly what Allah tells you in the Quran it's all about. Those who do not heed the remembrance, they are lost, they're astray, they have no supporters, they have nothing. What is the dhikr? Notice it's not any remembrance, the one, the most important thing. We use the like this today, like, I don't want this car, I don't want this thing, I want the thing, right? Allah's telling you the remembrance, whatever it is, the only way you can get to that is via the Quran. No other text, no other things. This will point you in the right direction as a guidance, as a light, as a separator, criterion. Think about all of the actual names of the Quran. Nur, it's a light. Guidance, huda. Furqan, criterion. Rahmah, mercy. Doesn't it tell you this is how you understand the world? Would you like to understand the world? Would you like to, you know, like if somebody were to come down from the heavens as an angel, and they say, Allah sent me to show you the reality of the world you're living in. Would you like to know? Or is it the case for most people, they just kind of, they want to wander blindly because they're comfortable in the illusion. There is no place for illusions and magic. There's no place for poetry. There's no place for lies. There's no place for whisperings with the Quran. It banishes all that stuff. This is not the word of an expelled devil. All of those things are associated with demonic activity. Because remember, they are agents calling, beckoning, coercing mankind to enter hell, as many as possible. Yeah, absolutely, Miss Sally. Like, this prayer system, whatever it is, in many ways, like, you just have to kind of step back. I mean, it's hard to see when you're in it, right? But if you step back and just look from a third-person perspective, right? What that is the extent of what they see God as. Think about it. The atrocious lies and slanders about not just the Prophet Muhammad, but other prophets in the Quran, how it's said to them and how it's said about him in Hadith, right? Or the Bible. They accept that. What does that do to your psychology? Doesn't that fracture you a bit? Like cognitive dissonance, right? If you mandate something upon a man or a woman in Islam, or any religion for that matter, and there's no clear understanding why or how or what's the purpose or benefit, because remember, we're inquisitive beings, because we actually don't have that much knowledge to us. Mankind was given no knowledge except for a little, right? That's all we can handle at a time, it seems. How do you expect humanity to just follow from that point forward? Just do this, trust me, bro. And this is what Allah wants, because the Prophet said it, and the scholars already concluded what the Prophet said. And scholars today follow what those scholars said about the Prophet. You see, it's a freaking circus of like contingencies. That's the problem. We never go directly to the source. So I would caution everybody that is sincere in their intention. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Like, whatever you hear from reports, right? That's what hadith are, reports. Take it with a grain of salt. Go back to the source material, the Quran, right? And just meditate on that yourself. Don't take other people's word for it. I know it's kind of a radical idea in our time. Assalamu alaikum, be patient, welcome to the stream. Very kind of all over the place stream today. Yeah, so what was I going to show you? Oh yeah, Salat. So I just wanted to put this because clearly to broaden your reach of data collection when it comes to extracting the meaning from the Quran, because really that's the missing variable: meaning, remembrance of the Quran, the dhikr. Everyone's memorized it. Everyone can write it down, even though they've memorized it in, redundant or what would you call it? They've memorized it in recitations that are at odds with each other. 7, 10 of them. Some people, like some scholars, agree on 14 even. So clearly that's not the way. I'll show you what I mean. So I go into, a recitation competition. Quran. This is what you see. You have judges like it's American Idol, and they're just reciting from memory whatever verse, they're adjudicating, listening to the recitation. I have no problem with the cultural attachment to the Quran having healing sounds. That's perfectly normal. However, a book is read. You're not going to sing Harry Potter or the Bible or whatever. And I get it. It's because these books will never approach the Quran whatsoever. Recitation in the Quran is reading. Reading goes hand in hand with literacy. Literacy is about comprehension. I mentioned before, I used to memorize the Quran because I realized, well, this is good to do. And, imagine astaghfirullah one day where people forget to memorize the Quran. The word is protection. It's not incumbent upon humans to protect the Quran. That's Allah and His angels are tasked with that. We need to follow the remembrance of what the Quran is reminding us of. What is it reminding us of? Oh yeah, no big deal. Just all the significant events of history that actually gives us the context to why we're in this situation and why we're headed down this road in the future. Why the world is the way it is, how you were created, what's going to happen with you. If that knowledge doesn't matter to you, fine. But clearly, it's really important, if you're a human being, to look at it this way. You're right, Carnetics. The more that we look at this book in this way, every single ayah is profound, in its right place, with its right number, with its right flow. It's not just some lists of trees in paradise. Oh, and they will have pomegranates, and they will have dates, and they will have this. Think about it. That's enticing to somebody with no understanding. Just like the virgins in paradise idea is enticing to somebody with really kind of twisted intentions. Allah is telling you critical, need to know, eternal information. And when you look at the Quran that way, all of a sudden you realize, what the heck? We've actually missed the entire point, because while we're busy listening to how beautiful the Quran is, we've abandoned the Quran's message. I mentioned it before. If a messenger comes to you and he's like, I have a message for you. This is the message from the most important sender, which is Allah. The Prophet, he gives you this envelope. And there's a letter in there. Letter in the Quran is risala. You don't know anything, no context. Your first thing is, I'm going to read this letter. Whole thing. Cover to cover, whatever. And it's very confusing at first glance, because it's not written like you would write a letter. It doesn't use the same format that you would use if you were to write a book. Maybe the language is a bit kind of mysterious to you at first glance because you're thinking, oh wow, this sounds like poetry, like I've seen poetry before. Over time you realize, no, this is done in this way, so there is no argument that it's not from God. And then you realize, okay, so this is very serious. Allah is not just giving us a formality saying, hey, you dumb humans, I'm your God, worship me. That's how people see it. Other side, oh, it's this beautiful mystical book of wisdom and pearls of guidance and how to be a good person. And no doubt, no doubt. Go figure. There are many self-help books on the shelves in bookstores. This one, however, makes all the others redundant, irrelevant. So, to understand a message, to convey a message, to receive a message, you have to read it. You have to make sense as much as you can of what's there. It really bothers me that neglect the Quran is given. Allah gave us this mercy in the form of the Quran and it neglects nothing. Every single person is accounted for. Every blade of grass, every tree, every jinn, every child, every person that's died. Everything is accounted for in that book, and we neglect it. So I, invite you to continue that journey if you've already gone, or make that journey, start that journey for yourself. That's all you're responsible for in this life. No one is going to be responsible for where you end up. Every soul bears its own responsibility within its own capacity. There's no bearer of burdens like in Christianity. Even in Hadith, they put this as well, like a sinning Muslim will put their sins on a Jew or a Christian. It's vile. That's that's taught in the mosques that we're supposed to see as a guidance to understanding it. They've just sold us out. So yeah, what I mentioned is one of the ways is you'll find that other languages concocted from Arabic give you more, not less. They often give you more information. Sometimes you'll find they're the origin of the problem. Like, I'll give you a very good example of that. Okay. So everybody understands the word for books, right? Kutub. Again, you go in, you're always going to be confronted with ambiguity, redundancy. This is why this is the biggest threat, like by far. The biggest threat is taking all this information, doing the due diligence, proving for yourself as much as for God what the translation is. It's not unattainable. It's very attainable. I'll show you in a minute why. And do you guys see that word there? It's called asfaran. You think that's books, right? Nope. Journeys. If you want any proof that Muslims have abandoned the Quran, particularly Sunnis, I'll just kind of highlight Sunnis for a minute. Let me show you actually. So I'm gonna go here and type in Okay. That word, asfaran, is used for books. Hence, every translation, pretty much standard idea in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, is a donkey carrying books. Look, it's right here. The imagery. Here it is again, volumes of books. Um, it's used to highlight enemies of your sect. Even though donkey's just a creature at the end of the day, like they probably serve God more than us. The idea is it's not books. Never was books. What would be the point of a donkey carrying books? Nobody does that anymore. Nobody. We don't even use them for transportation half the time. And mostly books are just kind of electronic now. That's how it is. That means that ayah, by that translation, interpretation, is stuck in time. When people use donkeys to get around and they would bring all these hadith books and on the backs of these donkeys. No, it's not books. Because all I have to do is put this word in the Quran, Sefer. And yeah, this is Maltese, but Maltese is very similar to Arabic. You go up and you see, okay, it's all about journeying. Okay. What about in Hebrew? In Hebrew, it means books. Let me show that to you guys, okay? So you go down. All right. Kitab, Mushaf, that's also referred. This one, though, they put in there Sifr. There is no Sifr in this verse. It's Asfar. I showed you already. Journeys. Surah Saba, right? Saba. And then you go back. Which language uses? Oh, it's Hebrew. Sefal. Book. This is why there's a conspiracy in the translations. I know they say it's borrowed from Sifr. Sifr. No, you go in here and put that in there. Where? Where is it? Oh, here it's writing. Oh, okay. Ultimately from Hebrew, mark or trace or writing or something. No. It's journeys. Donkeys are used for travel. Yeah, you can kind of weasel in there that writings are traces and marks of something like tracks on a voyage, but that doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. You see, look, the word here is asfar. Sefer, asfar. How can this fake word sifr have the same plural as sefer? I don't know, guys. It doesn't take a genius, clearly, to show you that we have multiple agendas taking place to obscure this revelation as much as possible. So let me show you why I think it's possible that we will see probably at some point in our lifetime, inshallah, if Allah wills, a translation of the Quran where you don't have to wonder what did they translate this word as in this ayah and that ayah, because it will be the same word that works in all cases. That means it's superior to anything we've seen, because we clearly don't have that yet. I'm sorry. No offense to Baba Shoaib, no offense to Sam Garens, no offense to any of these. That's what we need. Consistency. Explanation of everything in those pages. Not just words. How they're used, the symbols in there, why is there's markings here, why is this past tense, why is this future tense. Everything will be put out front. And I think that's more than reasonable, because did you guys know, you're probably aware of this, but 85% of the Quranic words fit on a few pages. Let me give you an idea. So this was revised recently, and you take a lot of the most common words. So this is a good starting point. If you can see the screen there, this is a good starting point, because originally I was very cautious when it comes to prepositions, because I'm not talking from the standpoint of an official expert. I'm talking from somebody that doesn't speak Arabic as a native language, believes in this book, and tries to make sense of it like anyone else. Even the people that speak Arabic today, they have a certain disadvantage when it comes to understanding this book because of the nature of how it uses these words today. And so I was kind of like, put that on the back burner for a bit, prepositions and this and that. But now I realize this is the basis of it. The reason why is these words, in 6 pages, these words are 40% of the Quran, roughly. It's not too many of them. That means if you're going to do a translation, right? Hypothetically, this would be a good starting point. So first 6 pages, 41% of the Quran, you're looking at a total count, because the Quran is roughly 77,000 words with repetition. And this is like 31,000 of them, almost half. You go down further. Now it starts to put in nouns in there, right? Attributes of Allah, other things. Adjectives, titles, parts of the universe, phenomena, places. It gets a little bit more specific. And it just makes sense. The frequency of usage is going to point you to the right direction, because there's too much information for the human brain to actually consolidate, right? It's difficult because you have to factor all the other types of words used in the Quran when you think, okay, what does this mean? And sure, you can be confident, but let's say you want to know for sure, have some certainty, yaqeen in there, right? This is where you start. You start with the basics. Because, again, there's no synonyms, but we're looking from the context of Arabic, right? Every ayah, pretty much, mainly, is going to use these first 6 pages. Yes, not, she, these, those, his, hers, my, we, she, which, what, above, under, back, in front of, around, between. So it just, the time-consuming part is proving it. And proving it comes down to like actually subbing in what you define this as, what you conclude is the definition. Like, for example, one of the words there is wara'a. Let's just say that means behind, wara'a. If you put that everywhere, and I'm going to show you why that word is funny. If you put that in every occurrence in the Quran, does it work? Clearly, they don't do that. Beyond, behind, after them. No. Wara'a. Wara'ahum, after them. It's behind them. Besides, ahead of me, after. How can it be that disparate? Before or behind you and after you? No, it's one word. This is all one word. They put it as different things in grammar because Arabic is so sophisticated. One word has such a broad concept in grammar. It can be used as a noun. It can be used as a location adverb. A lot of adjectives in the Quran are actually nouns as well. The nouns are built off of verbs. So when you go down, you have to just think for a second. What do you do in this regard? What does that mean? You go back and you think this word is from this root where there's a certain thing told all the time, right? Like behind you, behind them, behind one. So muriyat, if that's from that root, that's another difficulty as well. Sometimes they create roots that are like artificially separate. And I can show you maybe sometime in a video, like every single root has to have its own words. If the same word pops up in 2 different roots, you got a problem. And pretty much what I've seen, you can test it out for yourself, is this is always the case when it comes to a vowel being in the word. So let me give you one example of that. The word for heaven is sama. That comes from this root, okay? Sin, mim, wow. And again, I'm going to show you, like, there is ambiguity how they classify things. Because it's not meant to give you the full story. They just have to give you a cover story so you don't look as far. You just imagine everything's figured out. You don't have to do it. We don't have to do anything further. We do. And this root is related to the one for naming. Ism, name. Samuna. Okay. Samawat. Here, they put it as the same thing. But you'll find in other places, like other dictionaries, they divide it. They changed that wow into a ya. They did that to isolate the connection between the heavens and titles and names. Because the names of Allah, the names of the angels in Adam's story, you can see why that would be connected to the heavens, right? Where everything comes down from. Just like they did the same thing for Salat. And I put this in Livestream 7. This is why Salat evades perception and understanding. Because they made this root separate from this one. And it can't be. In dictionaries, it's not separate. So then who do you believe in? One is true, the other is wrong, both are wrong. What you're going to find is if you put all of the roots, so this is another task, right? And this would be helpful, right? You can see my screen, right? You put all of these roots one after the other, because this is what all the words are built off of, guys. You're going to see clearly connections there. Like the sounds are connected within this category. It's difficult to explain because it's like you're talking about something that's not actually tangible, right? But this is a way of organizing information for us, for humans. It's already there in the Quran, no problem. Everything's perfectly as it is. But we haven't done the work largely authoritatively, pan-textually to show it, to show how much this Quran actually reveals. So 85%. Let's go all the way down. All of these words within, I think it's 51 and 10. 40 pages, like less than 50 pages. And how many words are on each page? Roughly, I don't know, like 26 words a page, let's say. I know it seems like a lot up front, but I actually have an Excel spreadsheet where it has all the words in order of frequency. I have another one that has all of the roots. And it's so funny because if we don't have the full story, we can see there's tampering, there's hiding, deception going on. We have the resources. We're aware there's a problem, and we have these tools already done for us by so many experts who've done all the work to organize the information in the Quran in so many ways, except in the one way that matters. You can see that the plan is set for this to happen. You guys are probably aware that Sam Gerrans just finished his task. He's said it's the end of the road. He can't continue his work anymore. And, you know, all credit to him where it's deserved, because I think, you know, I think right now there's this kind of urgency at the moment. And the urgency from the powers that be is based on what? The fact that there's a variable in the world out there called Qur'an alone. And these people that literally ascribe the Quran as the word of Allah solely in our time, without the need for any explanations or anything, any scholarship, they go directly to the source. Just like when you pray, you don't pray through a scholar or an imam or Muhammad, you go directly to Allah and pray. That's a threat. And it's a threat because it overrides all of the traps. You don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to be an Arab. You know, when we're talking about like modern terminology here. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be somebody that's, you know, athletic or whatever. Everyone has a capacity to understand something. So, you know, like, you're gonna see the world start to accelerate its delusions to pull you away from the thing that matters. And trust me, like, think about it. Isn't it all distraction anyway? Isn't it all entertainment? Isn't it all just this kind of exercise in futility and delusion? Until the hour comes and you're shown what it's all about. Nobody will actually have an argument on the Day of Judgment. So I just can't see like any alternative at the moment. Like, if you, let's just say, because most people speak English, right? And English has the widest vocabulary to even create words with, you know, what you think could fit this idea from the Quran, right? I think there's so many things you can add in a translation to make it actually user-friendly. And trying to extract as much information as possible from the Arabic that you can't get in any translation from any language. For example, masculine and feminine pronouns for all kinds of things are lost in the translation. The diacritical marks are lost in the translation. So wherever it says al-ardu, al-ardi, al-arda, they just put it all as earth. So the sound is different in Arabic. The context of that sound, the same word, but there's a context to the word in Arabic that's lost in English. We can do a better job. You can color code words to show consistency, to remind you that when you go back to the Arabic, that little nugget of information is accounted for. You can do a list of all of the, I know it sounds monumental, but, you know, a list of all of the verses that have this idea. You can highlight the word for say as, like, you know, commands from Allah, like qul. Put that in a specific, so you always reminded when you come across this, that's there. When you come to words with definite articles like the, you can capitalize that in English. That's an advantage of English that Arabic doesn't have. But it only came about because we lost Arabic. So if you see, like, you know, for example, the tree, and you just type in with a capital T and a capital on the as well. Now, when your brain reads that, it gives more weight to it, basically, instead of just it's just another thing. No, there's consistency. It's not meant to be poetic. It's not meant to be random. That's why it's revealed in this way. So many other things. Like, for example, the ayah numbers. I think that is also preserved. The chapter titles are preserved, the chapter numbers. Think about it. You have a glossary at the back of your Quran translation, and that glossary is just got all of the different words in there. So many words are repeated anyway, right? So you could probably fit it in. You go to any word in alphabetical order, the transliteration, and you find that that word is the same everywhere. No, there's no lack of consistency. It's the same. The hour, as-sa'a, is the same everywhere. Like for any word. You could have columns, 3 of them. One has the Arabic on the side, just to remind you what the actual source text is. The middle one has transliteration, so people can pronounce Arabic with the Roman language, Roman characters, right? Because it does help. Like Baba Shoaib did a very good job with that, where he puts the transliteration. But you can even make that consistent as well. Like I've used transliterations from like Quran apps, and sometimes it's helpful for memorizing and doing all kinds, but sometimes it's not consistent. So you can use letters to symbolize every sound in Arabic, right? And people can read in Arabic without knowing how, like, without that barrier at the beginning, entering Islam. They never grew up with Arabic, never spoke it, never read it, just by having that transliteration there. And then on the other side, you have the translation. So it's kind of like you don't have to be an academic. You don't have to be any of these things. Even the grammar differences in the Quran, genitive case, nominative case, accusative case, that's your fatha, dhamma, kasra. That can easily be shown as well in a translation by symbolizing things. They do this actually for tajweed Qurans. They have different colors. They have different little symbols, markings. Why? Because they're obsessed with reciting the Quran. I'm trying to take all of that energy and funnel it into understanding it. Sure, you can recite. Case in point, the recitation has ambiguity. The recitation, the oral Quran, cannot make up its mind between zirat and sirat and sirat, maliki yawmiddin and maliki yawmiddin. This is recitation. A person doesn't read or write, recites both. That's why we can't rely on just that. Go to the text that's supposed to be read, then recite it. Yeah, recite it all the time, but keep in the back of your mind, the text is preserved. It's called Hafs and asim. Just watch my first video. The idea that there's qira'at, that's done. The idea that Mecca is this dusty sandbox where anybody can go in and share pictures on Instagram and just do these exercises in futility around the Masonic symbolism and stuff. That's done. Done. Move on. The idea that salat is this meditative prayer where you don't even know what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're saying. That's done. You know why? You don't have to prove it. People want you to come up with the religion of Islam yourself. That's how bad it is. It's not about that. Whatever Allah wills will be revealed anyway. But what you can find definitively true, like let's say, like the scientific method where you are falsifying something by its own conflicting premise, right? You can do that with all of these things. Show them there's an issue with this explanation. The Quran is still true even if all of mankind got it wrong. I mean, it won't be all of mankind, but like most of mankind will get this book wrong. Expect that. Even the people that come up with alternatives get it wrong. Because there has to be a standard. There has to be. And you have to also keep in mind, this is not just prose, okay? This is speech of the Creator. Let me show you a good example of how this works, okay? Where is it again? Here it is. There's that mysterious symbol again. They tell you it was 1/240th of the Quran. There's not even 240 occurrences of it. Indeed, Allah is the cleaver of grain and date seeds. He brings the living out of the dead and brings the dead out of the living. That is Allah. So how are you deluded? Let me ask you guys something. Of all the things you understand Allah to be, because He exists, really, when you think of the word al-falaq, a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, the action that word applies to apparently is grain and date seeds. I can't believe they got away with this. Nobody cared, because to the kind of human tendency towards shirk, that's really what it is. They turn God into this Arab man, basically. They turn God into this kind of metaphorical, inaccessible / anthropomorphic tyrant with these words. Why not go into what nawa actually means? Date seeds? Fine, if they call date seeds that, no problem today. But where did they get the idea to call a date seed that? Allah is exalted above what they ascribe to Him. That's repeated throughout. And if you don't think people see Allah as a tyrant in Islam today, this is the need to get a consistent translation, so your subconscious doesn't put 2 and 2 together without you knowing it. Look at that on the screen and tell me everything is figured out. The same word for Allah's name is the same word for tyrant. That cannot logically follow. Cannot. Whatever came up with this inspiration for these ideas is clearly calculated. That's why I always come back to this idea of ma'ashar al-jinn wal-insi. If you don't believe by the unseen at this point in this stage, you can forget about everything else that follows from the Quran. The jinn, and specifically the shayateen of the jinn, and their commander, Iblis, is running laps around the human race at the moment for quite some time. They have hyper intelligence. And I'll tell you what, once you start to identify the problem is not just human, then you understand why humans keep falling into the same trap. They're being egged on by another intelligence. And that intelligence is motivated to make you kufr, deny, reject, blaspheme, be ungrateful, so you can be sent to hell. You guys, this should be the topic of every khutbah, every Friday sermon, every congregation in the Islamic tradition. How do we avoid shaitan from sending us to hell? The believers in the Quran, they make prayers, dua. Save us from the punishment of the fire. Does that resonate? Jabbar, tyrant here. Al-Jabbar, irresistible. No, it doesn't. I can find so many occurrences like this. It's laughable that people think we just take these Freemasonic dictionaries and just take everything that they did in them. No, we wouldn't be in the stage. We'd still be in the hadith phase, where a hadith is just recited on top of the Quran. And we just sit there, just like, twiddling our toes in the mosque. Just, yep, that this is true. The Prophet reduced the prayer number from 50 to 5 because Musa convinced him to bargain with God. Things that of real significance that we don't even think about, like Ya'juj and Ma'juj. You just watch the last live stream if you haven't already. Like, that's clearly explained in the Quran. And what do we get? We get this, frankly, retarded version of that in the Hadith. Not to mention the Bible. They're trying to erode Iman in people. Within the current events, within the academia. Why? It all starts with that. If you take that piece out of the equation, the Iman piece, everything else follows. It doesn't work. Allah says in the Quran, and by the way, I mean, I don't have to bring every single verse. You guys should read this book all the time. Allah says, even with this distorted translation, you still derive so much benefit. SubhanAllah, that's why the Quran transcends all of their plans. They made all these fake Qurans called like Warsh and Qalun and all this like Duri and all that. And they labeled Hafs and making them minuscule and everything. And this is what you're reading right now. This is all Hafs. All of the translations, I mean, think about it. It's overwhelming majority. Overwhelming. It has nothing to do with mixtures of different recitations. It's all Hafs. Even that plan didn't work because all the analysis is around Hafs. All the miracles, Hafs. All of the like definitive usages that even I've looked at, like for this, Hafs. You can use Hafs to prove one of them wrong. Just in one word, one verse. That's enough. So Allah says in the Quran, those that come with deeds and they don't believe in Allah, they don't believe in the last day, they don't believe in all these other things that follow from being conscious of God, their deeds are worthless. That's very profound because it suggests that no, it's not poetic. And Allah says, الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. They have to go together. But I think it starts with the iman part. Right? Doesn't it start with that part? Again, look at the example of Fir'aun. He's drowning. He's fighting for his life. And I mentioned this on a stream with my brother, Let's Find the Truth, his channel. Fir'aun tries to put this shahada together because he has no deeds. He has no reconciliatory works. Amal means working, right? Amal, we're meant to work for something, work towards something in this life. And anything you do, I mean, that all adds up. That's all accounted for. Every little action that you intend to be for Allah's pleasure, that's all accounted for. Like, don't actually deny yourself of any opportunity to earn that. Allah tells you very clearly, Jannah is earned. His mercy allows for you to have opportunities to earn that. That's why nobody enters Jannah without His mercy. At the same time, Allah tells you those who do this and this and this and this and believe this and this and this and this, they go to Jannah, they enter. Simple criteria. There's no mystery around it. They only introduce the mystery with hadith. Why? Because all of a sudden, Jannah is just like the most attainable thing. Look how many billions of Sunnis and Shias are in the world, and you just have to recite something and you get this reward in Jannah before the judgment. Never made sense to me. But when you're talking about, the hereafter, I mean, there's nothing of greater importance for mortals like us than that. Everybody agrees on that. If they don't agree on that, there's eternity and all this, then okay, sorry, can't help you. That's how it works. It kind of stratifies people according to what they're willing to take on. If it's a big hurdle for you at this stage in the game to conceptualize the world outside of a globe, then so much knowledge will be locked for you. It just will. I mean, if it's impossible for you to conceive of salat as anything other than standing and reciting and pleading and kneeling and bowing and holding your hands, and then so much will be locked for you because you've come to the Quran with assumptions. Same type of assumption people had about Isa's hanging, crucifixion, and the world at large believes in that assumption, that he was crucified. The Quran says no. I mean, I just want to show you, this is my brother and friend's channel, Yakshamanji. He did a video on this recent occurrence that happened. And this is exactly highlighted in the Quran, that there is a appearance of reality put towards people, most of mankind, and they take it on as history. They take it on as a mutawatir hadith. However, Allah uses the example of Isa and the crucifixion to highlight that that is not how you determine fact from fiction in the world. This is the latest mutawatir hadith. How many thousands of people were there? They all saw the same thing. They all kind of concluded largely that that's what happened. But if you watch this video and other videos as well, you'll find that no, it just doesn't make sense. It just cannot be the case. even though it had so many witnesses who claim the same conclusion as the media. You see how they use this, right? It's even biblical in its language. They say like God saved him that day. No. This is theater. And this theater is the kind of thing that just completely derails any progress as a soul in this experience. Because if you think about it, we live in a society that's clearly sophisticated in its framework and everything before we're born. So we grow up learning everything wrong. We go to school, our parents learned it wrong as well, so they just impart more falsehood as well. We go get a job, it's the same thing. Everything is, almost like the complete opposite. Almost like, like they're trying to, like I kind of can't use this expression, a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't follow. It just doesn't. If you believe in the Quran as the word of God, as the word of Allah, investigate how Allah uses the concepts in the Quran and where they pan out in reality. You're going to find Yahud and Nasara doesn't make sense, that how they call it Jews and Christians. You're going to find Al-Masjid al-Haram doesn't make sense, what you see in the world today. You're going to find the entirety of what you assume to be true, like this event, is nullified, falsified by the criterion that is the Quran. Yeah. So think about it, right? If you take back anything from this kind of long, I don't know. I like to try to keep things casual, because it's kind of like when a person is not approachable, they start to become dehumanized, right? Like you become a bit shy trying to come question with a sheikh or a scholar or a priest or the president or a teacher or a professor or whatever. The doctors, the lawyers, they have this prestige attached to them because there's these titles attached to them. And so you look at yourself as less significant when Allah doesn't see it that way. Everything in this life is a means to, understanding just the goal, the main thing. He doesn't even elaborate. Doesn't even elaborate on most of our history and most of our preconceived notions. It's not in the Quran because it's of no benefit. It's even, like I said, put into categories that deal with that idea, like assumptions, the lies, hypocrites, disbelievers. There's so many ways Allah can explain one thing for all the things that fit under that umbrella. And so when you look at the Quran with that lens, you can see that it does address everything. It addresses everything very carefully. Yeah, exactly. So, Kenneth, like, they need the globe in order to say that Mecca is placed according to the golden ratio. I think that's so poignant, because there's a difference of opinion when it comes to that notion in the official scholarship. But really, Allah is telling us in the Quran, those loyal to Him are the only ones exempt from Shaitan's diversion. Think about what that means. Mukhlasin. That is made from the word ikhlas. That famous, everybody knows that surah. قُلْ وَاللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Those are the people, mukhlasin of ikhlas, that are not deceived. I should probably change the screen. It kind of... So think about it. Why do the Sunnis oblige the West? I thought they hate the West. Why do they steal all of their science? They say, oh no, that's our science actually. The Islamic Golden Age came up with all these things like the globe. And no, that's ridiculous. You're telling me the Islamic Golden Age, these people that should know more about the Quran because it came before us. Allah says, those who came before you were more powerful, longer lifespans, taller than you, everything better in the creation. They still, left the calling of Allah, but you're going to tell me that's what they concluded? No. It's appropriating the Quran to man's desires, man's biases, assumptions, preconceived notions, suppositions. And what comes from that is a Quran with contradictions. And it can't have contradictions because then it's nothing special. It's like the Bible. It's like the other things that mankind can invent. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Salam to everyone in the chat. What the idea is, brothers and sisters, is to get a Quran, go through every word, start with the most frequent words, and just work your way down. If you don't know something off the top of your head, like what it could be, that's fine. You just go with the best so far, and you just keep going, surah by surah, ayah by ayah. And what you're going to find is almost 9 times out of 10, there is a major discrepancy. It's like they literally turned away from what the verbatim speech of Allah says to insert something. A good example of that is the last surahs, the smaller ones, like, I don't know, if you go to 98:1, let's say. Okay. Maybe there's, I think, let's try Surah Al-Shams. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا. You guys see that on the screen, right? So it talks about the sun, then it talks about Al-Qamar. And what is the Qamar doing? Talaha. What? I thought that is related to reciting. No, here it's following. Yeah, absolutely, Manji. The Mustafa Khattab Clear Quran, it's kind of an oxymoron because it throws more clarity into the actual translation. Like, it does the opposite. It's like you give 3 words of what you want to convey, and the person comes back with you with 10. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Let me see if I can find it. All right. Is it here? One sec, guys. Here we go. This is what I'm talking about. If you're not aware, Hani Achan is taking it upon himself to do all the work that somehow is missing in there, but it becomes not within brackets. Well, sometimes it's within brackets, but you know, you're talking about one of the shortest surahs in the Quran, and this is what is concluded from it. So, Alam tara kayfa. Let's go to the whole let's go to the actual surah, shall we? Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashab al-fil. That's it. That's the first ayah. And what you get from that is, have you not seen how your Lord planned and acted against the kindred and spirit companions of one with the flawed, feeble-minded opinion? I can barely say that in one breath. The next ayah. Alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words, right? Dr. Handy. Did he not, the one with the feeble-minded opinion, render their plotting and their self-misguidance? If you can explain to me what that means, I'm all ears. Because this is complicating things on like a PhD level. Maybe that's why it's called a Dr. Henny. Next ayah, right? وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4 words. Okay. Comfortably. You can say that comfortably. Verse 3, Dr. Haney. And he, your Lord, sent against them Tayr, angels and teachers who are disciplined trainers of shepherds of camels. This is the fruits of metaphorism. Twisting the words out of proper usages to convey what? This is what the Prophet Muhammad was sent with? I thought the Sunni interpretation was bad enough, right? But this makes the Quran alone position look incredibly incredulous. Okay, verse 4, almost done, right? ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل. 1, 2, 3, 4 words. Dr. Haney. Slandering, i.e. defaming, condemning them with hijara, i.e. ayat that include judgments or declarations against those who deserve the hijr, the quarantine from a recurrent bearer of drowsing Musa. This is what Sunnis think we do. And this is one surah. God forbid the rest of the Quran. How could you, I mean, you really have to wonder, is this a condition, or is this a LARP? Is this trolling? So Yeah, defaming, condemning them with hijara. Now, hijara are not stones. It's ayat. Look, how could Allah's ayat? I mean, he uses ayat here as like, you know, the verses of the Quran, right? How could that slander somebody? Like, it's almost satanic when you think about it. Like, it turns it into a joke, into a circus. And it's amazing. This is what you're compared to. On this path, this is what people conclude you're about. Oh, you're like that Dr. Haney or whatever. No, no. The contrast is night and day. And let's just finish off the ayah. Why not? فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. 3 words, guys. What is the overall image of this translation? And then he, your Lord, rendered them companions of the flawed opinion, like a chaff that is spread by the winds and then eaten and excreted. If that doesn't make your head spin because of the absurdity of what's companions of the flawed opinion, that's one word, by the way. Al-fil. One word is turned into the flawed, feeble-minded opinion. Forget elephant. You are now a resident. Like you're living in a house, resident, or with somebody, companion of them, of an opinion. That's absurd even in English. And, you know, this is what we have to come to terms with, right? So the same thing will be used all the time. This is just one example. Sometimes people will come to me and they'll say like, oh, by the way, bait doesn't mean home or house or anything, right? It means, I can't even remember, I can't keep track of these alternative definitions anymore because they seem just so arbitrary. Allah talks about this very clearly. Like, they will follow what seems like similitudes in the Quran, mutashabihat. That word is used for the crucifixion, like something that appears to you be the best way, but it's not. And they follow that, and they cause this discord around the Quran, around the revelation. But the ones that believe, they say, no, we believe in all of it. We don't have a problem with the content. That's the issue. These people have a problem with the conclusions of the Quran. The Quran gives you a cosmology and a history. And you know what's funny about this idea? They're going back to all of the assumptions around the Quran. Dr. Haney takes the position of the mainstream Islam when it says that this is around the context of Abraha invading Arabian Mecca in the 6th century. And because the Prophet was born in that year, he couldn't witness the events as a baby. There's no historical evidence. Birds carried stones and pummeled the attacking army, trying to destroy the Kaaba. So it didn't happen. So the Quran verse and that surah is something totally different. Assumption after assumption after assumption. There's no evidence of largely most of the hadith, I mean, pretty much all of it, in the places they claim it happened. Does that mean we throw out the entire Quran? No. Yes, the traditional narrative is erroneous. That much is true. What's your alternative? Oh, the alternative is to play these games where all of a sudden elephant doesn't have to mean elephant or anything like that. Let's just say for a moment it does. We're not changing anything. Remember, this is like a kind of da'wah, right? Da'wah, du'a, they're related. And you go to a Sunni and say, listen, what will it take for you to understand that hadith is irrelevant, redundant, complicating the Quran? Why not take the story as it is, first step, and show why this account, you use the same words in the Quran, this account doesn't follow from hadith. You cannot bring elephants across a desert. That's why the history is wrong too, with Hannibal turning the elephants across the Sahara up into Spain, coming down through the mountains and attacking the Roman Empire. Oh, that's another story. Why elephants all the time? Because I could be wrong, but that's literally what the word means. I mean, I can only imagine what Baqarah means. I mean, think about this, okay? You go to the guy's channel. I did this last week, just for curiosity's sake. You just look at the thumbnails. Does that remind you of something? Right off the bat? Does it remind you of this? Maybe. There's this. And there's this. And whatever, coincidence, I guess, everything, you know. And look at it, okay? You scroll down. Okay, just going off the titles, right? Just going off the titles. Injil is not the Christian Bible. I mean, that's what most Muslims believe. Then you go down more. Okay, what are bees in the Quran? Not what you think. No, okay. Open to idea. Messenger for mankind, Muhammad, prophet for Bani Israel, irrefutable proofs. Ah, those are really big titles for that. Imagine if I talked like that. Irrefutable proof. No, nothing, nobody has any input they can offer. The moon split. Irrefutable evidence. Explosive disclosure. Let's go down further. Not sure why you have to spell Yusuf with an S. 2 S's like that. And think about it. Same font, same thing. How does that work? Accidentally. Okay. I go down and, you know, I see like Quran spelled with a K and I see Yusuf spelled with 2 S's. There's no need for that. I mean, you could just, it's English. I know it's flexible, but why insist on making it different, you know? Like the Zekawan people, you know, Zekawan, they spell everything like Persian Arabic. Quran, Islam, sauna, Omar. Like, they think like gematria is so critical when it comes to Arabic, even though gematria is based on like English and Hebrew and all that stuff. And they have to spell a certain way, has to be different. It's like superstitious at that point. Anyway, you go down further. Let's see. Jesus and Mary were African. Yahya, son of Mary. Where is it? No Eve in the Quran. Why Iblis, jinn are not what you think. Guaranteed way to defeat Iblis. Avoid all 7 gateways of Jahannam. And by the way, not sure if you can see, but it says there, like, why no stories equals no Quran. Fair enough, I guess. Strange way to word it. And then I come to this: how to circumcise a she-cow. Wait a second. Can you imagine? I go into the mosque and I say, yeah, Dr. Hanny, he has this video, how to circumcise a cow, which is female. And there's no way, I mean, that could even, you know, think about it. You can't even do that. There's no male member on a cow. That would be a bull. And the story of Surah Al-Baqarah is would never be something that God commands, that Shaitan admits he will do. Because Shaitan says, I will slit the ears of cattle or something, and then he will change the creation of God and all this. And that's a whole topic maybe we can do another time. But this is, I mean, where's, I don't see irrefutable evidence here, so maybe it's a bit doubtful. Who knows? The son that Abraham almost slaughtered. New Quranic evidence. Four major mistakes made by Quran. What is the correct methodology? Mother of all gifts. Why no mango or pineapple in the Quran? Who are Ya'juj and Ma'juj? Okay, so this, sorry guys, I'm gonna have to cut the stream eventually, but you know how it is. There's a problem. There's a massive problem in this community. And it makes sense because we're coming through the meat grinder of all of these attachments to the Quran. Whether it be the Tartarian people, or it's the Sunni, Shia, Sufi, or it's even the, you know, irrefutable evidence, masterful doctors. So many doctors in the Quranic discourse. Dr. Yasser Qali, Dr. Hani Achan, Dr. Haifa Yunus, Dr. Rashad Khalifa. How could I forget? Rashad Khalifa is in the same idea. You think that hasn't been planned from the beginning? As soon as the internet must have started, they already factored in people are going to use it to research this book. And they have. And it's brought in so much understanding. I wouldn't be here if I didn't find articles online that thoroughly attempt, honestly, to understand the Quran from its context. So what do? We have all of these signs around us. Well, inshallah, this is supposed to be an inspiration for the common person that you can actually achieve this if you dedicate enough time. And I get it. People have done the work as well. Like Sam Gerrans, for example. I mentioned him in the stream, right? Sorry, let me move on to, I'll come here again. Yeah, would you like to see Sam Gerrans? Sorry, I kind of, this is important, you know. I mean, give me 1 second here. So let's go to chapter 9, verse, I think it's, let me see. Where was it? Somewhere here. Inviolable place of worship. Yep, here it is. Verse 28. Okay. So Sam Gerrans, he puts Al-Masjid al-Haram as the inviolable place of worship. Fine. What does he take from this ayah? Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, addressing the believers. Innamal mushrikuna najsun fala taqrabu al-masjid al-haram ba'da 'amihim. That much is clear. Allah gives a command. And let me just show you here. La yaqrabu. My mistake. I said taqrabu. La yaqrabu. You're going to see why that's significant. If you take this verbatim, it's literally saying, "O believers, O those of you who have believed, O the ones who have believed, the mushrikun are only najis. So they do not approach Masjid al-Haram. They do not. Yaqrabu." And look at this note here. Typically read, "let them not approach." The textual justification for reading la taqrabu rather than la yaqrabu follows. Let me show you here. Sam Gerrans is arguing that these dots here are placed wrong. So it can read as if the believers are the ones to not approach Masjid al-Haram. It doesn't say that. It says the mushrikun are the ones who do not approach that. And this is a long explanation just for that simple idea. I get it. There was another one. Let me just see if I can find it. It's something we have to avoid because clearly this is crosses a red line for me. It just, if somebody brought that to my attention, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, anyway, if you go to, I'm not saying to denigrate Sam Gerrans whatsoever. I'm just saying, like, is that the best we can do? No. If you go to verse 158, right? I think it's on this page. Oh, no. Bear with me here. Okay. He doesn't translate as-Safa and al-Marwa. And that's fine. Nobody translates it, whatever. But what do they mean? If you can understand what they mean, then you can get an idea of why they're mentioned. Why even do we have this tradition today in Islam? Okay. Well, this is Sam Gerrans' explanation. As-Safa and al-Marwa occur only once each in the text, which fact makes them vulnerable to specious interpretation. Somewhat predictably, the traditionalist makes highly specialized claims for his religion that the two words represent rock outcrops out at Al-Masjid al-Haram, and that pilgrims historically walked between those two rock outcrops. For some purely religious reason, blah, 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 his claims are without foundation. And then he says, I cannot definitely prove that he is wrong in his claims. It is impossible to prove a negative. The interests of intellectual integrity, I should allow that he might be right. Perhaps as-Safa and al-Marwa indicate two small rock outcrops. By the way, this is all based on Masjid al-Haram being in the current location. That's something that I don't think Sam Garance has ever considered, like, expanding upon that, right? So if you go down here, my case for the meaning of as-Safa and al-Marwa is this. Here it is. We should remember that the Quranic text we read today contains diacritic and textual accoutrements which are interpretive in nature. This is not unusual for religious texts written in Semitic languages, which are deficient in certain markings in their simplest written forms. You understand what that means? That means the Quran is not a complete revelation. That's the title of Sam Garen's translation. The Quran, a complete revelation. But it just so happens to be missing the markings. And if you want to call me stupid for not understanding history and manuscripts, fine. Albeit, probably that doesn't come with watching videos that I post on here. But what seems to be the case is if you study those diacritical marks, they're not random. And how could we throw all the blame on the hadith, Quran rejectors, best of the hadith rejectors, the Sunni sect, the Shias? How could we blame them if we believe, according to Sam Garance, all universally that the Quran never had these markings? And so we can make whatever we want. That's why in this actual explanation, this exegesis, he says, we don't even know how to pronounce as-Safa and al-Marwa because of this. It could be Isfa, what is it? Lusfa and Isfa and Imra. Isafa and al-Marwa. No. No. He's saying that it's like the Torah. One problem, though, the Torah is chicken scratch. There's no way to read it without putting all the stuff in there. They made it like that, so you will see the Quran in the same light. They put all these manuscripts in front of you. They cannot even prove they're from the time period of the Prophet. They just use the excuse of carbon dating. And it's just excuse after excuse after excuse. So what does he conclude as-Safa and al-Marwa means? Felicity and manly generosity. Felicity and manly generosity. But then you understand that he's basing all of this on al-Masjid al-Haram being closed to the believers within the time of the revelation. Oh, perhaps it is closed, Sam Garance. It's just that it's in the wrong place. So I'm going to start wrapping it up. There is no ambiguity with the Quran. It's clear, complete, fully detailed. You can say that confidently because that's what everything points towards. This is an assumption that there's no diacritical marks, just like it's an assumption that the dots were placed incorrectly on yaqrabu to make it taqrabu. And he even puts in the translation to walk between them. What? To visit them. You can't walk between felicity and manly generosity, if that's what it is. So I guess it's left untranslated. Fine. Guess we'll never know. We should just sit back and let everything happen. Let the 19 people figure it out. Let the Tartaria crowd figure everything out for us. Yes, okay, got your, Putin is Zulkarnain. Thank you so much. I just follow these dictionaries. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anything like that. Never attack the idea. Only the person. That's the modus operandi. So, would it be surprising to you if you've learned that Sangharen's translation is the same for Surah Al-Fil, in the sense that it's not elephant. Fine. Doesn't have to be elephant. But it's interesting that Dr. Hani has a concordance with the poetry of this mystical verse. We need to translate the Quran objectively. In 3 hours, if you haven't realized that, then okay, have a nice life. But it has to be done. I think it's pretty much inevitable at this point. The cat's out of the bag, as they say. The genie's out of the bottle. And with this information, you can kind of grasp the necessity of it. So I thank you so much for listening to this stream, providing feedback. It's very helpful, to get the kind of feedback I do on these streams and on the comments. Let me know what you think. I know there's going to be 1,000 kind of, what about this? What about that? Can you explain this to me? This video exists to put the power back into your hands. Reflect. I'm not this kind of guru, not at all. I had to learn things with Allah's permission, with help from Him. Ask Allah earnestly. Teach me, Allah. Teach me, I want to learn. Rabbi zidni ilman. Allah, increase me in the knowledge. And He will. He loves those people that strive to give Him His credit, His due, His exalted nature. And with that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace.